Hi, everyone, and welcome to Professionals Unplugged. Thank you for joining me for another candid conversation about work. I'm Inga Hepton, your host and owner of Medea International. So, I'm an executive coach, and my mission is to improve people's impact and success, especially by supporting leaders with their so called executive presence. And with me today, I have Bill Haase. Bill has 20 years experience of working in the trading pits of Chicago and 18 years on Main Street as an advisor and now teaches financial literacy. But he's also coming off a 4-year radio show, creating a new podcast this fall with iHeartMedia. The show, like his public speaking title is called Intent. Do you live your life with intent or by default? And I have Michael Buzinski, founder and CEO of Biz Media, an award winning multimedia and marketing firm dedicated to the needs of small to medium sized businesses and nonprofits. And he's so passionate about marketing that he's also the CEO of Buzzworthy Marketing, which offers strategic marketing to B2B service based businesses. And last not but least, I have Bob Williams, a fellow executive coach with a diverse background spanning military leadership, successful tenure in global financial institutions, and a talent strategy in the world's largest BPO. So, welcome everybody. So, today's topic is aligning your talent to the company vision and getting everyone to create value. I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you guys. But, Michael, why don't you kick us off?
So when you bring up this topic, it's a very bittersweet topic for me. I've been in business for 19 years, and about 5 years ago, I actually shut down a creative agency, a multi-million-dollar creative agency, brick-and-mortar, the whole nine yards. Had about 22 employees, 13,000 square foot facility, the whole nine yards. And the crazy thing was, I would probably say 3 weeks prior, 4 weeks prior to when I made the decision to shut it down. I had a team of what I thought were rock stars, completely aligned with a vision and a culture that I had spent 13 years at the time cultivating. And only to find out it was really just a house of cards. And
Mm.
so when I reinvented how I ran a marketing firm as a virtual marketing firm, I found that I had to completely rethink culture because a virtual company and a brick and mortar company, as you know, is a very different venture. But it allowed me to start picking people who had more alignment in how I wanted to live my own life as a virtual company owner, looking for virtual employees. So a virtual workforce is all about flexibility,
Yeah.
freedom, and that's one of my core values is the freedom to choose independence, right? And so we realigned how we hired and realigned our core values to support the type of people we were looking for. And so now, instead of hungry innovative folks, we look for independent entrepreneurial folks that have the already have been down the road in the marketing world. It's a very bumpy road, but it's really amazing because the people who are not going to make it, they self-identify really quick, and they usually bow out because they don't want to be exposed.
Did that come with a vision change? Did you actually change the vision of the company to fit the people that you were looking for there? Then
I actually changed the vision of the company to fit my personality and my passion. So as an entrepreneur, a B2B, I work B2B my whole career, and I've done marketing for over 1,200 companies. And the crazy thing is that we, as a creative agency, we didn't have a niche. We were a generalist creative agency. But then I found out, as you were kind of alluding to, is that if I wanted the best of the best in my talent, I needed to niche down to where I could identify what they're the best at, because generalists are really good. But when you have somebody who's like specific on who they serve, how they serve them, and the way that they serve them, that right there shows depth and you really do get leverage of the repetitions, just like a football player trying to play baseball, right? Like, remember when Michael Jordan
Yeah.
went from basketball to baseball? He was always really good at basketball because he had the reps on it. But he went to go to baseball, not so good, right?
Yeah.
Didn't
No.
last very long. Went right back to what he was really good at. So it's taken the last 5 years to really kind of start narrowing it down into like, okay, where am I the most passionate about? B2B is such an awesome place. And we're specific even on that. We're B2B professional services, consultants, and fractional executives
Yeah.
because they all market the same, but all their stories are very different. So I get the variety that keeps my ADD brain engaged and like wanting to be there. But then we get super deep in our methodology. So we're actually able to leverage those repetitions into being the Michael Jordans for B2B marketing.
I like that you talk about serving, right? So you want people who are there to serve others, and you talked about passion, very very important. When I built the business a couple of years ago, people I brought on were all called contributors, not employees.
There you
So
go.
everybody is a contributor, doesn't matter. So we're all equal, and so we all have a say in it. I also talked to people and said, "This is what I'm doing. This is my passion, and this is what I'm doing to serve. Is this something does it agree with you?" And I would read my mission statement. We provide knowledge gives you options gives you freedom, and
Mm-hmm.
do you buy into that? So from the first time meeting somebody and bringing them into a company, I wanted to make sure they were already in alignment
Mm-hmm.
and following that passion, and it, you can see it in people that do, as opposed to some folks will say, "Oh, sure, I could do that. I could buy into that. Whatever." You get a feel for it, and when you get a group of people that all is on board with the same passion and wanting to do this, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
It's not a job anymore.
Yeah.
This is what can't wait to get up to do.
Yeah.
I piggyback off of what you're saying there. And I changed one word. I say how instead of are. How are you independent? How are you aligned with? Right. And it
Mhm.
helps them to explain to you their perception of what you just said. Because if you say, "Hey, do you agree? Do you have any questions or anything like that?" Yeah, there's just gonna be like, "Yeah, I'm not here to make any waves." But I find that it's asking them like, "How does this align with you?" They can't say yes or no. They have to actually
Yeah.
reiterate their feelings, right? And
Yeah.
then another thing that we've looked for is intrapreneurs. So you asked for contributors. We look for intrapreneurs. So one of our core values is work like you own the place.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we want those intrapreneurs. They're people who have entrepreneurial tendencies, but they don't have the grit or even the passion or the want to have all the responsibility of the risk of being an entrepreneur. So they're an intrapreneur.
It's probably because they're very smart.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there's a thing about, I mean, obviously, right? The value of asking open-ended questions rather than closed-ended questions. You get a lot more nuanced answers, and people actually start thinking about their answers before they give you one. Um, but what I'm hearing in terms of the company values and vision and people buying into it, obviously it creates a certain amount of loyalty, buying in, and motivation. I know, Bob, you've done a lot of work in that area as well. I was just wondering if you could give us some really good examples of why is it so important that people align with company values, and why companies really should start thinking about it. Maybe not just the obvious one, right? Like the better motivated, but
I'm always so happy with conversations like this because it comes back to the military. And what I learned so much in the military, and I do keynote on this, and I talk about three little words, and those three words are in order to, and it really goes into aligning people with the mission. And it's, if I say to you now, go and get me a coffee, and you run off to the cafeteria and they're not the coffee machine's broken, you come back with nothing. I say, if I say go and get me a coffee in order to quench my thirst, you'll come back with a tea or a Sprite or something else. Just with those words, just by saying that there's a mission there that is more than just what I'm telling you to do, it opens up everyone's talent and capabilities. Yeah, and exactly that way that Michael was just going through, it turns everyone into an entrepreneur and not just a collaborator or an employee. You know, you're not saying to someone, do this. You're saying, do this because I want to achieve this. And then they can say, well, actually, you could do this better. And I've found this so powerful in so many areas, and drawing it into the corporate world has been so interesting as well. So I know you asked about values, but when it comes down to the getting people to really contribute that bit more, allow them to bring their full talent and their full potential to the table, it really is just aligning with that vision and that mission, so people have that north star to go for. And the other reason why we do it in the military is because no plan survives contact with the enemy. So we need people to be able to think on their feet the minute that something goes wrong. And they can only do that if they know what they were really going for. In that example, bring me a coffee machine broken. They can flip into they're exactly what they know how to do. So yeah, these kind of conversations fill me with so much happiness, and it takes me back to my very happy days in the military.
Um, and that's so funny because the reason why I laugh when you said in order to, I remember it's been a while, but I was working in Deloitte, and I was working with a partner, and I couldn't get through to that partner, and no matter what I did in order to help him understand why doing it in a different way is probably going to lead to more success. And I interviewed a bunch of other people and say, so tell me more about this partner. I really struggle to get through. So I finally understood that I probably need to give a lot more reasoning behind it. And I thought about it reasoning, but it was actually, well, here, I'm going to give you the vision of things. This is how it's going to look like if we're doing it this way. And I use the words a lot in order to, and it worked. It worked.
It works.
After a year and a half, the partner turned around. After a year and a half, we worked together. The partner turned around and said, "Thank you. I couldn't have done this without you." So it was
There you go.
a huge shift. Yeah.
I think it lends to Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind, then first things first, right?
Yeah.
And in order to reminds me of just like I always start with what are we doing, right? Because I have teammates who are like, okay, they're very operational, so we need to get this done, this done, this done, this done, this, and it's like, well, stop. First, what we're here to do is help this client get this. This is their pain, and this is the solution. And then we reverse engineer to the first things first, right? And they can fill all that stuff in, but I always want them to like, get your head up on the horizon to see what it's going to look like when we get there first. Then bring that back, because then, like he was saying, is like when you get into the middle of it, and it's like, wow, there's a roadblock here. Can't do anything because our SOP says this. But if that's the goal, you already know where it's at. You know how to get around that, because I don't hire newbies is my new thing. But if they don't know what the end is, like he was alluding to, is like, or saying very well, in that they're not going to get there on their own. They're going to have to come back to you, which creates an inefficiency,
Yeah.
right? Because you're like, wait a second, you're going to come back to me for questions to answers you already know. If I just tell you what the answer is in the beginning, which is that's the goal, go get it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I like that because it's true. And looking at the end and then reverse engineering is very important. And then there's the other strategy I learned from a chess master. He said, look at the field, look at the board, look at what you're doing, come up with 3 different ways in which you can move forward to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish. Look at the field again. When you pick the way in which you want to move forward, look again to make sure you're not making any mistakes or missing anything that's standing out now that didn't before, and then make your move. And I like that strategy, and in that strategy, you can say to the employees and their contributors and such entrepreneurs, each can have an idea or thought. This might be a way to move forward. Okay, let's explore that.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
people
But
love to be able to get in.
So we all know it's important, right? And I don't think there's probably anybody well, there might be a few who would deny the importance of a vision, mission, and values in an organization, but I would think the majority of us would actually agree that there's a huge benefit and huge values to it. And yet we have so many companies, in particular bigger ones, right, where they have a nice vision statement, they have a nice mission statement, and it's just words on the paper or a piece of paper or written on the website, and it probably
Platitudes.
got diluted over time anyway because so many, excuse the reference, Michael, so many people in marketing have tweaked it. So that customers can, so that it reads good and customers buy into it, etc., but it has no meaning.
Just a platitude, you know. But
Yeah.
but I think that's due to the fact that, I mean, visions and missions weren't a thing until even the 80s.
Yeah.
Self-improvement and introspection was still frowned upon in the 90s. I mean, we're only a couple decades into this high EQ
Yeah.
for entrepreneurship, right? It's all about the buck, right? I mean, we have a whole in America, we have a whole education system that's just made to create factory workers,
Yeah.
right? Sit
Mm.
down, do what you're told, regurgitate what you're told so that we know you're trainable, and then at the end we'll give you a job that sits you down. We do what you're told, and you do it, and you regurgitate what we're told you. I mean, that's the process. And so it's just now in the
Mhm.
last like 2 decades, I would say a decade and a half maybe, that we have generations who are more apt to be entrepreneurs like early America than the opposite, which is the Industrial Revolution kind of created in the 1900s. So I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I just think that it's society's catching up
And
to
I
like,
think
oh, wow,
Yeah,
this is
you're
actually
spot
where we
on.
should be starting and not be like people go, I'll worry about a vision when I have time to have a vision. You know, when you first start, you're like the guy with all the hats, and you're like, yeah, the vision hat doesn't fit on my head right now. So we're going to put that over here, and it gets popped in a closet. And before you know it, like you're saying, you're a big company and you have no vision. And now they're like, well, what do we do now? And then, and that's where a lot of them they'll grow into failure. They'll grow themselves broke.
They lack purpose.
Yeah.
that was exactly the word I was going to. Is
Mm.
purpose. These new damn millennials and Gen Zs, they're all
Yeah.
about purpose in life, and they won't even entertain you if you don't fit their purpose and things like that.
Right.
So that vision is also very much aligned to your purpose and what you're actually going to give them and give society.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we speed up the process then? So if we're only, a few decades into it, and we clearly see the value, how do we speed up the process and then also ensure that we actually have the right people, the people who
That'll take 10 more
embrace
shows,
the
Patrick.
value?
Yeah.
That conversation will take 10 more shows because Michael said it starts with the educational system. And I don't want to
but
go
I
into that
but I
whole.
also think that adoption is 10 times faster and it's exponentially growing, right? Like you said, the employees are looking for vision. So demand will create that output, right? If somebody's sitting around, why can't I hire anybody? And then they go to a recruiting company and they're like, well, you don't have a vision. Nobody wants to just go out and work a 9 to 5 job anymore. It's not about feeding your kids anymore. It's feeding your kids while doing something you believe in, right? It's a two-tiered proposition because, well, in the United States, there's not enough talent for all of the opportunity that's here, right?
Mhm.
We have people coming from other countries to fill the gaps that where we can't fill in with our own people, and there was a great lie for about a whole generation and a half about college. And so you have a lot of people who are educated in things they're not passionate about anymore. And so
Mhm.
now they have to reinvent themselves. But I think through that, they're asking better questions. So to answer your question, I think that it'll be faster than it's faster than another generation or two, right? I think within the next 10 years, you will not see a company that starts without a mission, a vision. I mean, you got B Corps. They can't even exist without a purpose,
Yeah.
Hmm.
right?
Mhm. Right.
I would also, and dare I say it, empower executives, whether they be Gen X, boomers, or whatever, empower them to write their mission statements. It is not only in the realm of Bain, McKinsey, Accenture who can write
Mhm.
missions and vision statements. It has to come from the heart. It has to come from the soul of the people that are running
Mhm.
these businesses, and not
Mhm.
consultants who'll write it for you for a couple of $100,000 or whatever. I love consultants, but as I say, this has to come from the heart, and people have to believe that they can do that and listen to their people to really build something, as I say, that is a North Star and is utterly the purpose of that company.
Yeah. So,
They do it
so
that way.
once,
It's powerful.
once the CEO, let's say the CEO, a new CEO comes into a bigger organization, right? And they look at the vision and mission statement and say, okay, it might not fit the way I would like to run the company because, I come in order to grow the company, make it even better, et cetera, et cetera. So he or she tweaks the mission and vision statement in order to fit a little bit better. How do you then make sure that it actually trickles down and that to the rest of the organization and that they also continue to buy in?
So I really think it has to do with C-suite buy-in and then C-suite exercise, because people do
Mm,
what they see. Right.
Yeah.
There's so many of these executives. Well, the old school executives, I would say, like the new school, I'm an Xer, but I'm like an adaptive Xer. Like I like the new music and I like to do the new, like I have a fat tire bike instead of just the old stuff, back in the day, with the old technologies. I've got all the new technology, right? Like, so I'm an adopter, right? And in growing, and I'm always learning, right? So I want leaders around me who are doing the same thing, because that means that everybody around them will see that we're always learning. And if learning is a part of our mission, is part of our vision, is we're always growing, we're always innovating, which is technically one of our is called constructive dissatisfaction. I don't care how good it is, it could always be better. Or how could it be better? Right. And so with that, if I'm always exercising and my leadership team's always exercising with the people around them, those people start exercising. And that's how it permeates. It's through action, not just through a nice vinyl sign on the bathroom wall when you're washing your
True
hands.
with so many things. Like that is absolutely true with so many things. And as an old boomer dinosaur kind of guy, that I see the old school ways that go on, and it drives me crazy because I'm like, how is it possible you can't see that your methods don't work anymore?
Yeah.
You're not motivating people. You're demotivating, if anything. And I've seen this from Fortune 100 CEOs.
Oh, yeah.
It drives me crazy that and I know they lose a lot of talent because they still have that hard head, those big egos, and I love playing with big egos. I mean, I spent 20 years in the pits with the biggest egos in the world, and so they're fun to play with. But you're spot on. It's there is a new mindset. There is a new way and I don't know if it's new. Maybe it's just organically grown in the proper direction. Let's say, um,
Evolving.
where people are more allowed to. You're still going to have people though that they just want to collect a paycheck. Just let me show up, tell me what to do, and I'll do it, and you pay me, and we're all good. We still have that. That's another problem with our educational system. But you're always going to have those kinds of folks, and sometimes those folks, are beneficial to have. They get things done. But
Right people, right seat.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, sometimes you need a hole puncher.
yeah, yeah.
You don't need somebody who can to color. You just need somebody to punch the holes.
yeah,
Right? Factory workers, we'll always need them. And whether it's in blue collar or white collar, there's the line worker, as we call them, will always be there. Right.
yeah,
And as long as you're not trying to put a creative in a factory worker's position and a factory worker in a creative's position, your organization will work just fine in there. And I think that there's a lot of people who try to get people to be hoorah, rah, rah, woo woo, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, well, wait a second. Not everybody has to have that level of excitement. Not everybody has to be you. Like, you need all of the levels of personalities in a large organization. That's what makes them that big. Because if everybody was an A type, they would get nothing done. And everybody was type B, nothing would get innovated, right? So you need
right.
the balance of the two working against each other to actually grow and evolve, I think is the word you were looking for. I don't think
Mhm.
it's the right or the wrong way. It's the old and the new way. And we're evolving as people. And I
Mhm.
think in society, we're starting to care about the person that's next to us. Where before it was survival of the fittest. Get out of my way. I'm just trying to survive.
Right.
And I think that really segues into the last part of the title, which was all about the value creation. Now, if you
Mm.
need a hole punched, and you've got a hole puncher who only comes in every day and collects their paychecks and punches holes, they have just created exactly the value you want. So if there's someone sat in the wings who's a very creative, hole puncher who does holes in 15 different styles and everything else and whatever, but you only want a circular hole all day, that person doesn't add the value that you want, and they will be frustrated. So it's getting
Mhm.
down to saying, I want this value from you. I want this hyper creative value. From you, I want this hole punching value. And it's knowing
Mhm.
that, and it's letting people work to that. And if you're not really as hyper creative as I want, I'll train you to be hyper creative, a little bit more creative. But as I say, it just comes down to, instead of saying you have a job, you add value. You bring me that value. Bring me that value. And
Or
I
your
think,
purpose.
yeah,
That's the
absolutely.
purpose.
Yeah,
The
and
Yeah.
purpose for you being here is to create holes in paper. Like
exactly.
just be and the higher the value you bring, the higher you get paid. And in society, unfortunately, I think there is a disconnect in that everybody wants to have a purpose, but they think that everybody's purpose should get paid the same. And
Yeah,
it's like, no, you punch holes. The other person figures out how the hole's getting punched. Another person figures out what kind of hole it should be, right? The other person decides what paper we should punch it in, right? All of those have different values. And so therefore they all get paid differently. And so if we
yeah,
pay according to the value you bring to the table, I think that as a society, people will start getting it. Like, I want to have a bigger purpose because I want to have more freedom or money or whatever you want to call it. I think that that's where the disconnect is,
Yeah.
yeah,
because for a
I think,
generation and a half, we were told, well, if you go to college, you'll make a lot of money,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the
regardless.
But it
automotive
requires
industry.
a lot of
Yeah.
soul searching as well, right? In
Mhm.
terms
yeah,
of with everybody involved, in you need to have a good of an understanding. If you're at the top and you kind of define the value, what are my values? What is my purpose? What do I want the purpose of the organization to be? How does that align to the overall in the marketplace, in the economy, etc. And then you have to be really intentional, that's
Intention.
the word. Crikey, the German speaking, intentional when it comes to interviewing the talent and being very clear in the communication of it and asking questions on, well, what are your values? How do we align? Is there a misalignment? How do we overcome it? So it does require, well, it sounds like it does require a lot of rethinking when it comes to even the resourcing talent and choosing talent.
I have a question. So, is it the responsibility of the leader to make sure that each employee is fulfilled?
I don't think so.
I mean, I'd hate to put that burden on a leader, but
It depends how big
because
your organization is too, though. You
yeah,
can't take a Fortune 500 company and say expect. I mean, shoot, there was a time where I only had like 20. Let's see, 28 people in my organization. I didn't know the first names of everybody in there because until sometimes until they were there for a month,
yeah,
because I might be out of town. Da, da, da. So I mean, if you want your organization to grow beyond you, you gotta entrust the people who are responsible for that, right?
absolutely.
But if you're walking the walk and talking the talk, the people who are making the decisions are going to be able to look at that and go, this doesn't quack like a duck. It don't walk like a duck. It don't belong here. So we can't bring you in. Sorry. Right. That's
mhm,
their responsibility. That's the hole they punch for you.
yeah, yeah,
But I, I
good
would
point.
I would just say that anyone who runs a team is a leader. So
Mm-hmm.
the Fortune 500 companies have a lot of leaders in there, and I would say
Yeah.
that every leader is responsible that his or her team is
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled.
Right.
Absolutely. And when we realize that and take it away from the job of HR to make sure that's the case, and we actually say, leader, ask yourself at the end of the week, are my people
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled, and did I do enough to make them successful? The
Yeah.
world
And
I
changes
think
in
that's where you
progress.
run into problems because people get promoted within major big organizations, and there's no leadership training.
Yeah,
Oh, they
You-
exactly.
fail up.
oh
Yeah.
yeah.
They fail up.
But
yeah, you fail up.
that's an entire different conversation, right? And absolutely, I'd love to go down the rabbit hole with you guys on that conversation. Um, But I think there is a responsibility also for every single leader in an organization to just, yeah, make sure that they communicate their own values as well as the company values, in a way that is really understood by the different people, the different staff members. And there's also a responsibility to keep checking in, right? Because it's not just a one-time conversation. It's also about, okay, well, we're changing, we're growing, we're entering a new market, we're acquiring new organization. Hang on a minute, now that's complete chaos. How does that align? How does the new company with their culture align with the things we set out to do? That's all down to the leadership, right? And yes, of course, it's also down to everybody else to have a little bit of um, what's it called? Take responsibility and ownership for their own lives, right? So every
Mm,
single person, even the hole puncher, um,
hmm.
probably
Yeah,
should go home at some point and wonders like, oh, is that still my purpose? Do I still want to be the hole puncher, or do you know? Do I actually want to not punch three holes, but four, and they rather make them into a square? We all
Exactly.
have to take ownership of our own lives. I know we're running out of time, but I thoroughly enjoy this conversation, and I'd love to hear if there are any things we haven't thought about when it comes to values and why they're so important.
I just my personal view on values is that there's a lot of time spent writing values and things like that, rather than sitting back and reflecting that the values of a company are when the company is operating at its best and its people are at its happiest and they are absolutely, spinning their wheels fantastically. That's the time to say our values are this, because we operate best when we do this.
Hmm.
That, for me,
Hmm.
that's how you write values. And I know I could have opened up a huge rabbit hole here. We could be on for another half hour, but I just like to see it in that other way, that you don't think, what values should we have this month? It's like, okay, what are we doing when we're just absolutely cooking on gas?
I like
And
that though. Value of the month.
Value of the
yes,
month. That sounds like a very American corporate thing there.
yeah, on the
I
wall in the
feel like
canteen.
it just what's popular in the news today? Okay, that's our
Yeah,
new value, right? So I think that in small organizations, the values of the founder are usually going to be the guiding star,
Hmm.
because it comes down to that person, right? In large, medium to large or enterprise companies, it is the values of the entire leadership that has to come together, right? And so the commonality in what he was saying, in that what makes us tick, right? So I think that you can start with, well, what are my personal values, and just put them on paper and find people who share those values, and those are the people you should work with. You spend a third of your life with them, at least as an entrepreneur, more, right?
Hmm.
And so why not hang out with people who share your values, that have a diverse skill set than you, right? That's the one thing that a lot of people screw up, is that they think that their values and their skill sets are the same thing,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, no, no, no. Your values are why you do what you do well, right? And your skill sets what you do well. So I really think that, not spending too much time in the beginning and just using that introspection, which was mentioned earlier, in that these are my values, and they are how I guide my life, and my life is my business. So they're going to be very similar. But then as you grow, you reevaluate and then say, okay, what got us here? Which values were the ones who got us here, and which values are now going to be the ones who are going to get us where we are, because what got you here will not get you there. That was my
And
two cents.
reevaluate. This is not something you put together one time and it goes forward forever and it's going
Mm-hmm.
to work. It's fluid, it's liquid. You need to address it, because you're right. The leaders, it comes from the top down, and
Mm-hmm.
it shows and is reflected very quickly, and it spreads very quickly. Yeah, too important to make sure you stay focused and also pay attention to what's going on around you. That's one of the cheapest things to pay for, is attention, right? And yet I don't know about you, but I can go driving down the road and see how many people aren't paying attention because I scream at them all. But you know,
Yeah,
but you're,
in particular ones when they're glued to the phone.
yeah, exactly. You know, and such. But yeah, but reevaluate, and that has to be an intentional act, right? Because I
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
love to say you got to live your life with intent. Surround yourself with people who live their life with intent. You know, and you
Mm.
already
Love
have
it.
a core value together right away.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think there was a lot of in it, and in terms of why missions, and how to surround and be more intentional when and being continuously intentional when it comes to surrounding yourself, your organization with the right people in order to make that organization or your life a success. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Professionals Unplugged. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. And if you'd like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. And if you like to hear even more, check out my website, www.medeaintl.com, for insights, connecting, and coaching. Until then, unplug and look after yourself.